Tariffs. I've traveled all across New York. People are very anxious about the cost of everything. When you look at small manufacturers, when you look at any small business, these tariffs have been like a ton of bricks on their ability to make money, to stay open, and to continue to provide.
A ton of bricks. That's not a hyperbolic metaphor. That is the reality, crushing tens of thousands of small businesses across America every single day. We are living in an era where inflation is already suffocating the middle class, and the supply chain is more fragile than ever. Yet, sitting in their ivory towers in Washington, some officials seem to treat the economy like a theoretical chessboard. But the pawns on this board are real people. Factory workers, local contractors, and small business owners who are watching their margins evaporate in real time. Welcome to one of the most intense, truth-exposing confrontations on the Senate floor. Today, we aren't listening to empty promises. We are looking at the receipts. Facing Senator Kirsten Gillibrand is Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, a man desperately trying to defend a deeply contradictory policy system, demanding a boost in domestic manufacturing, yet taxing the core raw materials needed to do it. And worst of all, cutting the very funding used to train the workforce for those exact manufacturers. Over the next 20 minutes, we're going to dissect every piece of this hearing, from the danger of selling out national security in the quantum race to the illusion of the global supply chain, right down to a shadowy $7.6 billion budget cut. Brace yourselves, because the mask of macroeconomic policy is about to be ripped off by microeconomic reality. Before we talk about money, Gillibrand launches a preemptive strike on something far more critical: American survival in the next technological era, quantum technology. Listen to how she warns against the government's sheer naivety in handing over the nation's destiny to private corporations.
I understand there's been huge investments by lots of private sector companies, but nothing can replace American dominance with having that capability in-house. Because when you're talking about a private sector participant, they can sell their technology to China, to any adversary, to anyone. They don't have the national security priority embedded in their entire architecture.
Stop right there. Gillibrand is pointing directly at the fatal flaw of unchecked capitalism and national defense. They can sell their technology to China. Private corporations have one ultimate goal: profit. By cutting the budget for NIST, the administration is indirectly forcing top-secret research to rely on private capital. And when private entities hold the patents to quantum encryption, the ultimate weapon capable of breaking every global cybersecurity barrier in a split second, who is to say they won't sell it to the highest bidder? Let's put this into perspective. Quantum computing isn't just a faster laptop. It is the architectural foundation of the next world order. The nation that masters quantum encryption controls the global financial grid, satellite communications, and the entire digital battlefield. By outsourcing this to Silicon Valley, the government is essentially crossing its fingers and hoping that venture capitalists suddenly develop a deep sense of patriotism. But history tells us a different story. We have seen major tech firms repeatedly bow to foreign adversaries for market access. Gillibrand's demand for in-house development isn't just about saving jobs. It's about preventing the United States from leasing its own national security from a board of directors whose primary allegiance is to their shareholders.
Security. So I would urge you to revisit your exuberance for the private sector, because it puts us in jeopardy of not being first mover in a space that is essential for national security, for encryption, for winning the next
war. The receipt here is a glaring strategic blind spot, and the Commerce Secretary is completely silent on this point. When you let profit margins dictate national security priorities, you are no longer the one making the rules. You become the prey. And the fact that the Department of Commerce, and the very agency meant to protect our technological sovereignty, is pushing this private sector exuberance is a glaring flag that cannot be ignored. If quantum is a future risk, tariffs are a bleeding wound right now. This is where the debate turns into a bare-knuckle brawl.
I would like to know, what's your plan for getting refunds to our small businesses, refunds to our people, to the American citizens who've had to pay more, because right now tariffs have driven up costs so significantly that it's put many businesses at risk and in peril.
And notice what Lutnick does when cornered about the refund process in the hearing. He immediately passes the buck. He claims refunds are run by Customs and Border Protection under Homeland Security, essentially washing his hands of the very economic devastation his policies are championing. It's the classic bureaucratic sidestep. Take credit for the macro policy, but outsource the micro suffering to another agency. Then he pivots to a rehearsed talking point.
If you build in America, you don't have to pay the tariff. And the benefit of building in America, as you know, in New York, when we were there opening the $100 billion Micron factory in the state of New York, they were driven by the tariff policy.
Lutnick plays the oldest trick in the playbook, citing a massive mega project to gloss over the pain of tens of thousands of small businesses. Let's talk about that defense mechanism. He brings up a $100 billion Micron factory. Sure, massive multinational corporations with armies of lobbyists can navigate tariff policies and secure billions in federal subsidies to build mega factories. But what about the mid-sized manufacturer in upstate New York? They don't have a direct line to the White House. Watch how Gillibrand shreds that theoretical nonsense with the harsh reality of the 21st century supply chain.
They don't, because the reality of manufacturing in America today is that many of their inputs come from abroad. So, for example, a lot of our lumber comes from Canada. A lot of other particularly manufactured pieces might come from any ally or any other place in the globe. So manufacturing is highly complex, and it was created with an idea that the world was much flatter than it is today, with an idea that supply chains were inviolate. We know that's not true post-COVID, but tariffs on key allies like Canada can cripple manufacturers that are domestic manufacturers because their inputs come from an ally.
Boom. This is the intellectual trap Lutnick cannot escape. When Lutnick tries to deflect by attacking Canada and claiming they treat us unfairly, he completely misses the point. The global supply chain is not a light switch you can just flip off. It took decades to build. If a local American manufacturer needs a specific type of metal or electronic component or lumber that is only sourced affordably from an allied nation like Canada, slapping a massive tax on that import doesn't magically make a domestic alternative appear overnight. It just bankrupts the American buyer. Gillibrand makes it crystal clear. The concept of 100% made in America at the micro level is a myth right now. You're a home builder in America. You buy lumber from Canada, and taxing Canadian lumber means you're directly taxing the carpenter in New York, Ohio, or Pennsylvania. Gillibrand brings the receipt of ground-level reality. Tariffs are not a penalty paid by foreign governments. They are a hidden sales tax paid by the American business owner, and ultimately by the American consumer at the checkout counter. A ton of bricks crushing the chest of American business, placed there by the hands of the U.S. government itself. But if you think the contradictions stop at tariffs, just wait. This final chapter is the very definition of political hypocrisy. If the Commerce Department truly wants companies to bring manufacturing back to America, they need a workforce, right? They need trained workers capable of running advanced machinery. So what do? They cut the funding for the exact program that trains them.
Second, if you believe that, then why are we cutting the MEP program, the Manufacturing Extension Partnerships? Those are the job creators that allow for these manufacturers to train their next generation of workers. And in New York State, we have 10 MEP centers that created nearly 33,000 jobs over the last 5 years and contributed $7.6 billion to the economy. I just don't know why we're cutting these programs. That's
33,000 jobs, $7.6 billion contributed to the economy in New York State alone. The receipts are right there in the numbers. Let's break down what the MEP, the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, actually is. It's not some bloated bureaucratic slush fund. It is a lifeline that sends experts directly to the factory floors of small and medium-sized American manufacturers to help them optimize production, adopt new technologies, and train workers to compete on a global scale. It is literally the boots on the ground engine of the Made in America dream. To claim that you are the champion of the American worker while actively dismantling the infrastructure that trains them is a level of cognitive dissonance that is hard to process. Now listen to how a secretary justifies wrecking a perfectly functioning job creation machine.
The Inspector General has taken great exception with many of these programs. The program was started in the late 80s for advanced manufacturing. I don't take issue with figuring out how to do it right. But when it's been done wrong, it needs to be cleaned up.
Cleaned up. The weakest defense ever recorded in hearing history. Lutnick uses the vague specter of an Inspector General's report over excess compensation to justify cutting the knees out from under 33,000 workers. But let's look at the math. A $7.6 billion return on investment. If a private CEO saw a division generating that kind of ROI and decided to shut it down because of a few administrative errors, they would be laughed out of the boardroom. When you have a crack in the ceiling, you patch it up. You fire the bad actors. You don't burn down the entire house, using a few minor infractions as an excuse to sever the lifeline of a program. Generating massive economic growth isn't financial management. It's economic sabotage.
Well,
I
would urge you to come to New York, and I will show you how we got it.
Gillibrand ends the hearing not with a question, but with a challenge. Come to New York, and I will show you how we got it right. Over the past 20 minutes, we've witnessed how reality dismantles empty political slogans. You cannot protect American manufacturing by defunding the training of American workers. You cannot boast about America first while taxing the vital lifeblood of tens of thousands of small businesses. And you absolutely cannot guarantee national security by handing over state-of-the-art encryption technology to profit-hungry corporations. Accountability dies when we let politicians hide behind macroeconomic promises. Our job is to track the microeconomic receipts, the rising invoices, the layoff notices, and the debunked lies. What about you? What do you think about a government that imposes tariffs but abandons its own domestic manufacturers? Do you believe that cutting billions from the MEP program is cleaning up or sheer destruction? Drop a comment below, share this video so the truth doesn't get buried in a 30-second news loop. Don't forget to like and subscribe as we continue to expose the dark corners of the policies shaping your wallet. See you in the next breakdown.